How we doing? Fox back again for sound design tutorials. This video has been a long time coming. You're looking at the GUI for Reveal Sound Spire. A lot of my subscribers have asked me to get this over the 3 or 4 years I've been doing my YouTube videos. I haven't, not because I'm stubborn, but just for the fact that my time was taken up with all my other synths. I do have a lot of synths that are like this, having said that. But yeah, its popularity has led me to get this. I got in touch with the guys over Reveal Sound, and they were happy enough to give me with a copy to do these videos. So here we are. Then this first video is just going to be called sort of your first half hour with Spire. All I've done is installed it, been playing with it for half hour. I'm going to show you what I learnt in that first half hour. Should give you a good grip, or at least an understanding of the basics of what this synth can do. Yeah, sort of Spire in a nutshell. Once I've done this video, I'm going to get down to making a few presets. People can start sending in requests in for this now. I'm sure it won't take me long to get to grips with it. And yeah, we'll be using this from here on out. So, first thing I did, I went straight into the menu. I'll just have a look at the way you can select banks, import banks, remove bank. It's real straightforward. To select factory banks, there are 8. There are 7, including initialized bank, where you can store your own. You can import a whole bank. You can remove a bank if you've imported a sound set that you've bought. You can load banks that you've got stored on your system, save banks, presets, etc. I've got a preset on my desktop. This is how easy it is. Click on load preset, navigate to where it is on your desktop. You can search your file system on Windows or Mac. Double click on it. This is already a preset that somebody sent me that they wanted me to do a tutorial on. So they actually wanted me to copy this with a virus, so I may well do that later on today. That's how easy it is to import or load sounds. There is a very comprehensive library of the bank that you've got in here. They are labelled as you would imagine: plucks, basses, leads. It's really easy to work your way through and search for sounds. There, as far as I'm aware, there's no categories. You can't search by typing in. You can import banks or select your banks by this column on the left hand side as well. Micro tuning options, you're generally not going to want to get into that unless you're some crazy sort of music buff and you want to set it to a certain key or scale. Basic transpose options, up or down octaves, pitch wheel and mod wheel. The left column, then you've got these macros. We'll go into them in a bit later on when we talk about the modulation. Also in this menu you can register your product. Click on the about, it sends you to the website. Check for updates, go to the Spire website, reset the MIDI learn table. We're not going to need to do anything like that. There's a good undo button here as well, which is handy. I don't know how many times it does yet, I haven't tested it, but you do have an undo. In the GUI options, there's a few other schemes you can choose. I've been through all of these really. None of them were as pleasing to me or enabled me to use it as easy as the original theme. The navy grey one weren't too bad, but it tends to fuzz everything. I found myself squinting, so I kept it on the original theme. Yeah, so let's get down to it. You've got different play modes: monophonic 1, 2, 3, and 4, which means you can play 1, 2, 3, or 4 note chords at a time. And then you've got a portamento retrigger, which is like a round robin. Legato retrigger, portamento flow, or legato flow. So they are all monophonic actually. It's different modes. It doesn't mean 1, 2, or 4 modes. So if I put it on mono 4, this one is legato flow. If we give it a bit of glide, it means you can keep your finger on it and play the legato that way. I'm not going to delve too deep into this. You can choose the number of voices that you want. If you're making massive chords, you're going to want 16 voices, and that will need to be in one of the poly modes. So the top column is exactly how you would imagine it. Turn the glide off for now. So what is this? It's a 4 oscillator, dual filter, dual multi-mode filter, subtractive synthesis. But it's a little bit more than that. You've got some extra options and some controls when you choose the type of waveform that you want. So we'll stick to 1 oscillator for now. How you select your oscillator is by this section here. You can see the arrow underneath changes it. Oscillator 1, 2, 3, and 4. They are all identical into the controls and what you can do with each one. So we have note. See in this box here, you can transpose it all the way up to plus 11, which is 1 below an octave. You then have octave, really down low. You then have control over the scent, which is the fine tune here. So anything up to a semitone. If you click a control, it resets it back to 0. You have the phase of the starting point of the waveform. This line here depicts the waveform, so this is just a basic sort up. The phase is the starting point. You're not going to hear anything unless you have two of the same waveforms, and you can do some cool stuff like that. So the wet mix, this is how you blend it with another wave. You can choose all of these other waveforms at the bottom here. You've got sine, triangle, paraphonic waves. You can blend that sawtooth with these original waves. This is really the power of Spire for me. You don't just have these waves that you choose in the top, you can sort of blend them at the bottom. It's almost giving you wavetable style sounds. If you choose something a little bit more crazy like an FM one, we pitch it down an octave. You can imagine a bit of modulation, you can get some gnarly crazy sounds. So yeah, this is how you choose the wave that it's going to blend with the original wave. This box at the top is how you choose what sort of waveform you want to start with. So there's the classic waveforms. Noise sources. Let's pitch it back up. So, the classic waveform is triangle, square wave, through to a tri-square to a square. You then have control of the pulse width, which I'm a massive fan of. Doesn't do anything when you're in a square wave, triangle, saw. As well as the classic waveforms, we have different noise sources, as I just showed you. Low pass, high pass. Give it a bit of a resonant peak. If we go to the classic waveform, change it back to a saw wave. If you introduce a sine wave, you can wet mix it totally into one of these ones. So, as well as the saw wave at the top, you've got to think all of these can be in full wet. You can have all of these as individual waveforms. So, robo blending with your classic waveforms again. Then in the FM section, you can get some really gnarly sounds when you start playing around with these different FM sounds. It's a lot more than a silence, if you like, or a U-He hive. I could see why people would prefer this to a silent. It's got so much more control, so many more different waveforms, so much more modulation options. A lot better than silent in my eyes. And the sound quality, from what I've learned, even though I've only been using it for half an hour, the sound quality or the engine inside it is very, very, very good. So these different control functions have varying different controls depending on the waveform that you're using. We've got AM sync. Changing it from a saw tooth to a square tooth. And then the sync is the sync amount, if you like. This little graphical waveform, although it's not very big, it does help you understand what's going on as you are doing it. And then I've got saw PWM. We'll reset this controller. So it's a saw wave that you can have pulse width modulation with. Can then crank it up. Harmonic, different harmonic intervals or octaves. Again, you can always blend with any of these other sounds. If you wanted to bring a triangle in, round it off a bit. Very cool. We then have hard FM. They're at varying different intervals. It's a lot like if anybody see me use Nemesis, the way you can choose the different intervals of the FM. Different harmonic intervals. Very, very good to make some dubsteppy sounds. Very, very uncommon in a synth, because it's been around quite a while now. Yeah, very, very useful. I say you can almost think of this as a wavetable synth. The amount of control you've got of blending it with other waveforms, if you like. So yeah, we're going to keep it just on the classic now. That's the oscillators in a nutshell. Basic control over which waveform you want to choose, which one you want to blend it with at the bottom. So you've almost got 2 waveforms in one per oscillator. So it's like having 8 oscillators that you can sort of mangle together, blend around. Control over the note, fine tune, different varying options depending on what waveform you've got in there. You've got 4 oscillators all exactly the same. To bring another oscillator in, you simply just push the volume in. We quickly just spread these across some octaves. You can see how easy it is to get some huge sounds with this. So that's how you control the oscillators. You can turn the oscillators off by left clicking on that button at the bottom. We'll stick with 1 for now again. So then you come in the signal flow, if you like, you come then into the unison section. Choose the number of voices all the way up to 9 voices. This is per oscillator. So if we go back to oscillator 1, you can see as I've just changed to oscillator 2, 3, and then 4, it shows the 9 voices. So the detune is per oscillator. And this also correlates, this whole section changes anytime you modulate anything on each oscillator. So you've got unison per oscillator. Same as with in silent, you can choose a number of voices, choose the detune. Density of the detune, I can only imagine, I haven't looked at it for an oscilloscope, is like in Serum where you can push the voices together or spread them further apart in volume. You can choose the octaves of how it spreads unison voices, whether you want to spread the 9 voices over 3 octaves. 2. Different keys, chords. Very cool for your sort of future bassy stuff if you wanted to pick the octaves, pick the cut keys and scales that you're working in. You then have control over the width. Push those voices real wide on the stereo spectrum. The only thing I haven't worked out yet, what if this Anna is. I will look in the manual once this video is posted, and I'll put a link in the description. The invert inverts the waveform, so it will change this sawtooth from going that way to that way. You're not going to hear it again unless you have corresponding waveforms that it can phase with. Key, I would imagine, is the key tracking. If you turn it off, it plays all on the same key. Individual panning per oscillator across the stereo field. And then you can send each oscillator to whichever filter you want. There are 2 filters, so you can send it to filter 1, filter 2, or a direct blend between the 2. Then we move on to the filter section. So everything I've just said has been identical per oscillator. So you have all this control over every single oscillator. You then go into the filter section. They are in serial as it comes as standard, I believe. Automatically, there is an envelope mapped to the filter. This envelope 3 automatically marks to cut off 1. You can see there. If you control click it, it does away with it. So yeah, they are automatically in serial, which means even if you send 1 to filter 2, unless you send it in parallel mode, It's not doing what I thought it was going to do. That's because they're linked. Yeah, so when the filters are linked, both cut-offs are linked together. You move one, it controls the other. Unless you change it to parallel mode, the signal will always go into filter 1 and then into filter 2. If you change it into parallel, then you can choose which filter it goes into independently, and the signal flow runs alongside each other. Say you wanted oscillator 1 and 2 going to filter 1, oscillator 3 and 4 going to filter 2, and then you can modulate them and do some cool stuff like that. Just going to initialize this again. Filters that you've got to choose from are these different names. I've got Perfecto, Acido, Infecto, Scorpio, Comb. All of them are basically low-pass filters apart from the Comb, which is a comb filter. And then you have choice of whether it's mono plus, a negative, stereo plus, or stereo negative. Stereo plus is the biggest sound. I'll just show you what this sounds like. You can get some really cool chorusy sounds if you modulate the cutoff of a comb filter. I'm sure you're all aware what a comb filter does. So these filters, obviously cutoff 1 is there, cutoff 2 is there, resonance 1 there, resonance 2 there. Same filters per slot, so you can choose either one of the filters per slot. You've got filter balance, which is the volume coming out of the filter. So if you add a parallel signal, input going into both, varying different filter options, you can then blend between the comb filter and the normal low pass filter. If we add this, so very, very creative options. This is a lot like Massive in the way you can route these filters. You can choose whether to send 1 to each oscillator, both to each oscillator, all 4 to individual oscillators. You can pretty much route any of the oscillators to any filter however you want, and then you can blend the signal coming out the other end, whether it's in parallel or series also. Very, very, very powerful filtering options. Why you wouldn't have a dual filter in a modern synth nowadays is beyond me. That's the only thing that let Steve Duda down, I think, when he made Serum. There is a filter in the effects section, but being able to have filters in serial or in parallel before it reaches any effects is a must. So yeah, for that respect, excellent bit of kit. So yeah, that pretty much concludes the basic signal flow before it goes into the effects section. We'll talk about the envelopes now. Envelope 1 is automatically mapped to your amplitude envelope. They are a 5-stage, so you've got attack, decay, sustain, SLT, which I would imagine is or a rise or a hold. It's a 6-stage, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a 6-stage, so A, D, S, R. So you've got another tilt stage and then another release, another sustain 2. That must stand for sustain 2. So you've got 2 sustain stages and 2 decay stages, or rise stages if you like. So yeah, very, very useful. Automatically, as I say, it's mapped to amplitude, filter 1, envelope 1. They are really long and are really snappy as well. It's got to be 20-second on full attack, and then you can get some really, really plucky sounds. Very, 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 very snappy attacks. You can see why the trance producers love this, making some acidy sort of bass lines and percussive plucks and that. Per envelope, so you've got 4 envelopes, 2 on the left, 2 on the right, 4 LFOs. Talk about the envelopes again quickly. So you've got attack, decay, sustain, release. You've got 2 modulation slots outside of the matrix destination, if you like, that you can assign these to. Quite comprehensive. Pretty much every single knob can be modulated, which is a must for me, and they have done a really, really good job. Even the all of the effects buttons, and then also matrix destinations. So slot 1, slot 2, slot 3. You can see there's loads of different matrix destinations. All of those can be modulated as well, which again is a must for me. Modulating a modulator with a mod wheel, so you can have all your mod destinations set up inside the matrix section, then you can bring them in and out with a mod wheel. Very handy, makes it a really, really powerful tool for making your sounds. So yeah, as I said, you can have 2 destination amounts per envelope. So say we wanted to modulate oscillator 1 pitch with this as well. Give it some amount. So we also wanted to modulate filter cutoff 1 to open up. Changes to a low pass 2, then you will hear it. So 2 destinations per modulator before you go into the matrix section amounts to a massive amount of modulation. So envelope 2, again, 2 destinations. You can change the velocity sensitivity to these amounts as well, which is this section here. So 2 envelopes, 2 LFOs. The LFOs are quite basic. You've got square, sine, triangle. You can change them between free running and different modulation amounts. We'll just initialize this. We'll choose that perfecto filter again. We'll do away with the modulation that the envelope's doing. We'll assign this LFO to that cutoff. So you've got control over the rate. As I say, you can choose when it's in sync mode. You can set it to modulate to your host clock. Symmetry changes it to unipolar, which means it's only modulating one way off the center axis. You can change it to bipolar or unipolar the other way, which is very, very neat. You can change it to monophonic, which means it's just one LFO will trigger every time you press a new key. Or it's in poly, it means it's just like a free running LFO. Change the phase of the LFO, changes the shape. This slider changes the shape. This can all be modulated, I would imagine. Let's have a quick look. Let's have a look if LFO1 form. That must be LFO1 form. Morph. LFO1 form, rate, sim, phase, amp, mount. Form is definitely a morph. Oh, it's this. What? I didn't realise that. That's the first time I've seen that. Look at all these. Wow, crazy LFO shapes. Vocal ones. Different intervals. Whoa, rising ones. Alarm. Wow, yeah. A lot of random LFO forms. I didn't realise that that was there, so that's something else I've learned. Should this now be called your first hour? So I'm still learning. Yeah, you change the phase of the LFO where it starts, change the volume of the LFO so you can do sort of rising effects where you bring in the volume of the LFO gradually over time. Again, 2 destination amounts per slot. So 2 envelopes, 2 LFOs. You then have 2 step envelopes, or step LFOs if you like. These are really cool. They're a must to me. You can change. It's like the performer inside Massive. You can change the number of spikes or peaks, if you like, per section. Change the shape of them. H changes it to a square wave. You can change the pulse of them. You can also sync them to the clock. Change the time. Change the start point, change where you want it to end if you just want it to loop over the first 2. Let's use this to modulate the cutoff instead. So we're going to initialize it. We'll get it to start at 1, end at 2, so it's just going to be using these first 2 boxes. The only thing, you don't have any destination amounts to this, you actually have to go into the matrix, which we might as well look at now. You can have 2 sources per destination amount, so this one we want stepper 1 to trigger filter 1, cutoff 1. So yeah, we sent stepper 1 to cutoff 1. This is how you apply the modulation, positive or negative. So we're going to apply it positive. We go back to stepper 1. We want it to start 1, end on 2. Set it to a quarter note. We need to do away with the modulation that's already on this cutoff by envelope 3. Change it to a filter with it's going to have some input. So this times 2. Get some trance gatey sort of sounds. You can get it to re-trigger, or you can get it to just run straight through. Turn loop off, it's just going to do an envelope, which is very, very cool. So it then turns this into a step envelope as well as a step LFO. Very, very versatile. Can't go to the point where you can draw your own shapes in, but it's very easy to achieve what you want. Say I wanted like a boob shape, which is something that I use quite often. You can reverse it, smooth that off, click on the second one. It's a little bit fiddly, but you can achieve virtually any shape you want. We're still 1 and 2. Set it to loop. 1/8. We go into the matrix section, and then you can just keep adding destinations. I mean, the world's your oyster. There's some global ones which I think are cool. So master, out, main volume. This is how I would go about building some dubsteppy sounds, and if we went into the FM. Choose another FM one to blend it with, or something guitar-y. Change the rate to 1/4 again. Go to the matrix section, choose that, what's that? Control A, oscillator 1, Control A. So now would be a good time to go and talk about the effects. So we've just started to build a patch randomly. The matrix section, as I say, it's really, really straightforward. This is your bipolar modulation. So right off axis, or positive off the axis, dead center, and then negative off the axis. Let's just bring in an oscillator on oscillator 2. We'll bring in classic. So monophonic means it's one LFO that controls everything. If you uncheck monophonic, each time you press a note, it'll have its own LFO, so the rates can overlap. Get some very, very weird, spacey sounds. So yeah, the effects, you have a shaper. It's muted. You can mute them by here. Have we done all the... oh, there's an arpeggiator as well. Talk about the arpeggiator very, very quickly. So we'll turn it on. I'll just play a real basic chord. Your rate goes all the way from 16 to 1, so very, very slow. You can transpose with these. What is that velocity? That's saying note, but it's not doing anything. Again, I will look at that velocity. Velocity is to the hold. You can tie the notes together. Change the octave. Change the play mode. So, but it's a real basic arpeggiator. I wonder if step velocity is a mod source. Arp step, yep. So you can use the arpeggiator step sequencer as a velocity, as an input source, which is very, very cool. I wonder if it does anything when it's not turned on. Let's quickly have a look. Arp step 2, filter, cut off. Let's go out of it. Envelope 3, control click. Back to the matrix. It does, yeah. So the arpeggiator is not even turned on. It's not generating any MIDI notes to the note. We are literally just using this little sequence in here, step sequence, to control the filter cutoff. So you can create some crazy sort of pulsing, stuttering patterns. Very, very cool. Yeah, this thing gets deeper and deeper the more I look at it, the more I am enjoying what I see. So yeah, you then have a shaper. We're going to initialize this again. So we have a shaper, drive, change the bit. Sample rate, like a bit crush. Be nice on some basses. The effects are very basic, but I say you do have quite a lot of control. We'll mute that. You then have a phaser. Dry wet knob as always. Frequency of the phaser. Rate of the LFO. Feedback. Again, all of these are modulatable. What I used to do in Serum quite a lot is have no rate, no depth. Then just modulate that with an envelope like so. I would envelope 2, filter 1, cut off 1, negative. No, filter frequency, phaser frequency, effects, where are we? Phaser frequency. Get some really gnarly effects by modulating a phaser frequency with no rate and no depth. You then have quite a good chorus. You have a lot of control over this actually. So you've got the delay, which is the how long it takes a delayed signal to be. It's how long in time the copied signal is delayed from the original. Rate, how fast the LFO moves that starting point around. Lovely jubbly. We'll initialize this again. Bring a little pluck in. Oh, a delay. You've got delay time over the left and right. How wide the ping pong, stereo, the delayed signal is. Rate. This must be the delay. Oh, it's a modulation rate. It's modulating the pitch of the signal. Yeah, all basic stuff. I'm sure you know how effects work. You then have a real good reverb. Two different modes, plate 1 or plate 2. I was quite impressed with this reverb. I do like plate reverbs generally in myself. Damping obviously dampens the signal. It's like putting carpet on the walls. Pre-delay, how long it waits before it gives you the signal bouncing back. Colour is like putting a filter on the signal coming back. So if you want it bright to the right, letting the more lows through. Yes, wow, I have whizzed through that. The only thing that I haven't covered is these mod things. These are just macros. The way you get involved with them is in the source section. You can choose your mod 1. Say you wanted it to reverb wet. Have it on full. You can't rename them though, which is annoying. Or if you can, I don't know how to do it. It would be nice to be able to rename these macros. And the MIDI learn is quite straightforward. Click on the learn. Click on that. Click on the controller. Your MIDI learn is done. So yeah, I have rushed through that. I didn't want this to be an all-inclusive video going over everything in great detail, but I've covered most of what you can do with this synth. Yeah, please stay tuned to my channel. There's going to be a lot of stuff coming from Spire in the future. So if you've got any patches in other synths that are like this that you want me to recreate in Spire, yeah, I would like the challenge of that. So I've got that pad that I showed you earlier that I'm going to be making inside the virus. So yeah, should be fun. Yeah, as always, stay tuned. Thanks for watching. We've just pushed 10,000 subscribers now. I'm really pleased. Keep things going. Share, like, subscribe. Ta, thanks for watching.